Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Rate. And after a few closed session practices, the Badgers have entered spring break. And so there's not much to talk about right now with Wisconsin football, but I figure this is a pretty good opportunity to take a look back at the practices we've had so far and to see if we've gotten any answers or at least pointing in the right direction towards answers of some of the questions that I asked in my spring preview video and what we can expect from the Badgers from the rest of this spring. Okay, and first off, obviously, is what has changed with Wisconsin's offensive approach so far this spring? Well, it's not a surprise that the de-emphasis of the air raid spread looks has taken full effect. Still hearing a lot of 11 personnel with the base receiver group being Jalen Ballard, Vinny Anthony, and Tretch Kakahuna before he got hurt. But we're hearing a lot more heavier formations, 12 personnel with varying tight ends. But the big thing that I'm gathering and I knew was going to happen is I don't want to say simplification of the offense, but we're taking the thinking out of the players' hands and we're putting it on the coaching staff. Meaning we're going to have a lot less read routes, a lot less leverage routes. It's just going to be get to your spot. This is the spot you're supposed to be at. We're going to run a 15-yard in. We're going to run a 5-yard out. We're going to run a stick, whatever. Get to your spot, and that's where you're supposed to be. Now, obviously, in modern football, it's not that easy. Every route is going to have if, ands, ors based on alignment and leverage of the defenders, but it is going to be a lot more static, meaning the quarterbacks are going to have an added bonus in that the receivers are going to be in predictable locations regardless of coverage and leverage, etc. They are going to find their spot in the route structure based on how the route structure is designed in the playbook. So no longer are we going to be waiting for receivers to get open. There's going to be no longer that disconnect it seemed to have where QBs were expecting the receivers to be in one location and the receivers expected to be in another. The problems that we had with Phil Longo's read-based air raid offense. And sometimes that doesn't work. And that simplicity that it allows you to have where you can have a basic route structure, a basic play, and carry a few basic plays, but have those plays have different reads and reactions based on the defense. Now, the emphasis is going to be making sure that the playbook has answers built into it. So less reads and more plays for the players to learn. And I think we're going to see that idea expand as we go forward. I still think we're going to see air raid concepts, mesh, and Y-sail, dagger, stick, all these kind of things. We're going to see those. But the emphasis on reading post-snap is going to change, and it's going to be limited this season. Big change, obviously, that I expected to have happen, and it sounds like it's happening basically on every play, is the use of motion and pre-snap shifts. Shifts and motions are two different things. For me, shifts, we go from one spot to another and we become static again. Motions, we're continuing to move on the snap. So we're going to see a shift into a motion, etc. And I'm starting to get some of the answers that I was looking for is why we're using so much motion. Is it just there as eye candy? Is it just there as a coverage indicator? What is it? Well, really what it sounds like is it's going to be a way for Jeff Grimes to get more people involved in the running game and the passing game. Meaning, we're going to see receivers motioning into jet sweeps, into pitch relationship, end arounds, reverses, etc., to get the receivers involved in the running game. And then we're going to see backs motioning in and out of the backfield to get more involved in the passing game. So defenses are not only going to have to know where receivers and backs are when they get up to the line of scrimmage, but they need to think of where they're going to go post-snap when they don't know where they're going to be pre-snap. And that is going to add a whole new layer of complexity for defenses to understand and to defend. And that kind of complexity allows the offense to keep things simple in terms of their concepts, but they're just changing the starting points. And that is going to be a welcome change of pace. It's something that the Badgers offense used to have. You know, Paul Chryst used to use a ton of motion. A lot of times Chryst's motion were for eye candy, and it was just to change formations, but it was effective, and it was kind of fun to see the fluidity and how smoothly they can move from one formation to another. I think Jeff Grimes is going to take full advantage of the motion, not only as eye candy, but as a cornerstone into how he's going to get the ball in his playmakers' hands, which is going to be something that's important this year because we want to move away from the style of offense where we're just focusing on one guy being the bell cow and being the guy who's going to win the game for us. We need to get everybody involved, and using motions and shifts is a way that we can do that. By doing that as well, you are going to get more use out of your wide receivers, which is going to lead into the next question is how is the wide receiver usage being changed? And this right here for me is going to be purely speculation, just based on a couple of comments that I've been hearing, and then also thinking about how Grimes used formations last season and his receivers last year at Kansas. Obviously, we're going to get a lot more 12 personnel, 2 tight end looks this year. But one of Coach Grimes' biggest or most used formations in 12 personnel is essentially a trips look with the 2 receivers and 1 tight end on one side and another tight end on the other side. It's one of his top formations overall. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was the second most used formation last season. And so that means if you're going to run a formation like that, you need to have a wide receiver or wide receivers who have as much comfort out wide as they do in the slot. And I think what that's going to lead to is, yes, we're going to have, like, I'm sure guys like Jalen Ballard and Vinny Anthony could play in the slot. But I think we're also going to be thinking more about, can guys like Tretch play out wide so that when we go to 2 receivers, you've got your best playmaker still on the field in Tretch, motioning him and using him in that slot position. And then also building up guys who have positional flexibility and can play both inside and outside. And I think that's going to lead to a lot more playing opportunities for guys like Tyrell Henry, Chris Brooks, and then with the new incoming players in Eugene Hilton Jr. and Mark Hamper, guys who I think are inside-outside type guys. It is really going to allow us to build some nice depth. And it's going to be able to get the ball, again, into these players' hands in different ways. With Tretch getting injured here at the beginning of spring, he's going to be out for the rest of the spring. Sounds like he's going to be back for fall camp. I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for Coach Grimes, Coach Reed, to look at the receiver group and see who are his true flankers, his true outside receivers, which guys are the inside-outside guys, and which guys are the true slots, and how to set up a rotation and packages that get as many of them involved as can help the offense. Now, it's not just about getting as many bodies on the field as possible. It's about finding guys who can contribute to the offense in a way that is more than just a package here and there. So that'll be something to look into as we're getting into more of these practices coming back in April. Next up, let's talk about the tight ends. Obviously, Tanner Koziol has been getting the lion's share of the headlines so far this spring, and he should. Big, tall body, put on some weight and showing that he's going to have the ability to both be in the slot and in line. He is going to be your every down tight end. I don't see a reason why he's ever going to have to come off the field. Obviously, in 11 personnel situations, his blocking, it leaves a little bit to be desired. So I think that is going to change how they're going to scheme things. The good thing about the wide zone is it's not like he has to sit there and try to hook guys. Honestly, he is there just to set a wider edge and to force those edge players to work outside. So him just being there shouldn't be much of an issue. But it's when we get into the 12 personnel packages, it's how is the tight end group being used? How is the role being expanded? And the big one, obviously, that we've been hearing, and a prediction I made back when Coach Grimes was hired, it's what I made when we talked about it in the preview, and it's certainly coming to pass, is that Jackson Acker is going to be the Jared Casey of this offense. He is going to be an off-the-ball H-back type, fullback type. With the depth issues right now they're having at running back, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to get in some single back situations as a pure pass blocker, in two back situations as well. But he is going to be, I think he's going to end up, of the tight end room, can be the guy who's going to get the most reps, because he has, again, that phrase I've been using a lot this offseason, position versatility. He can play tailback. He can play fullback. He's built like an H-back. He's got the hands. He's got sneaky athletic ability. It's not sneaky athletic ability. He's athletic for a fullback. And he plays a position of need. We need the big gadget guy in this offense for it to function, I think, the way that Coach Grimes wants it, and I think he's going to be that guy. Then you've got Tucker Ashcraft. I think he's going to be your number 2 all-purpose guy. He's going to be your passing down second tight end to run the seams, to run the outs, kind of the role he had last year, but in a more of a secondary role. Grant Steck, I think, is another guy who is going to be really looked at to get a chance to push for a bigger role this season. JT Seagreaves, we'll see, but what you're kind of seeing right now is we've got 3 or 4 guys who kind of fit the same mold as Tanner Koziol, just maybe not as athletic, so you're going to see them more in secondary blocking type roles and in 2 tight end sets. But Tanner Koziol ain't going to leave the field, and I think as the season goes on, Jackson Acker's reps are going to go higher and higher. All right, next up. All right, so speaking of the running backs a little bit there, a big question a lot of people other than me have been having is, what's the running back rotation going to look like, especially because of Coach Grimes's tendency to have a feature back. And that's something that I kind of disagree with. And I think if we look at the numbers and we look in combination with the backfield as a whole, including the quarterbacks, I think there is going to be some semblance of balance. Meaning, I think Cade Yakimelli and Darian Dupree are going to be your 1A and 1B backs. And it sounds like in the reps that they have been taking this spring, that is kind of the role they've been having, with, I think, Darian Dupree maybe being slightly higher. Like, they're not going to be splitting reps necessarily, but your early down reps, those are going to be your lead backs. Dylan Jones has been mentioned as well. He has been having some ball security issues, but he will be in that mix as well. And I think what you're going to end up seeing is, if you look at the totality of the rushing yards that we're going to see from the offense, you're going to see whoever ends up being the 1A back, he's going to be a guy who's going to get 40 to 50% of the total rushing yards that this offense is going to produce, depending on how much the quarterback is involved in purely designed QB run plays, that will divide the reps between everybody else. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lead back with about 40% of the total rushing yards, a 1A and a 2 back, between the two of them getting about 40%, with maybe the lead guy, this number 2 guy, getting 25, the number 3 guy getting 15, and then everyone else getting split between the last 20%. Now, if the quarterback is involved in the running game as much as Daniels was last year at Kansas, I don't think so, but you can kind of move things from there. You're not going to see a guy who's going to go out there and get 75% of the total yards. That's just not going to happen, and it's not what the data has shown from the past. It doesn't present itself in a situation to help the offense, because what you're doing is you're putting all the emphasis on one guy. And if that one guy gets hurt or the defense can stop that one guy, now your offense is screwed. So you can have a lead back who is going to get the majority of the carries, but a majority of the carries just means 1 over half. To be a feature back, you need to be a guy who's going to be getting all of the meaningful carries. And we don't have that guy right now. Darian Dupree has a lot to learn. It sounds like he's picking it up. I think he's going to fit in well to the system. His ability to do a little bit of everything. He could be the running back room equivalent of Trechka Kahuna. We're going to talk about what I mean with those two guys here in a second. But he's not ready to be a 25 carry a game guy. Cade Yakamele, I don't think is either, because his skill set is a little bit limited. He is an incredible athlete, and he's a great football player. Do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's not capable. But what he's good at is limited in comparison to Darian Dupree. If we could combine those two, there's your feature back. But I think between Darian Dupree and Cade Yakamele, you have a solid workhorse back between the two of them. And then you've got role players beyond that. Now, will Dylan Jones and Gideon Atuka be satisfied with their spot in the rotation and their spot in the offensive packages coming out of spring? Let's hope so, because the last thing we need right now is another running back or a running back to transfer, because right now the running back depth beyond the guys that I've already mentioned is non-existent. So we can't lose another guy, or the running back room will be too small going forward. So let's hope they can find the right balance. All right, let's briefly mention the QBs here, and let's talk about how the QB rotation is being structured this spring. I mentioned in my preview that I think it's important that guys like Danny O'Neal and Carter Smith get quality reps, potentially with the first team, to prepare them for the inevitability of them getting playing time this year. Obviously, the sample size of the reps that have happened so far that we have been able to get reports from has been limited, but it seems to be, as probably be expected at this point in spring, Billy Edwards is getting 100% of the first team reps, with Danny O'Neal and Carter Smith getting all the developmental reps behind that. Not a surprise, and maybe it's something that we're going to see going into the later half of spring here, coming into April, that maybe we get some reps with the first team with Danny O'Neal and potentially Carter Smith, just to get them ready. But the things that we're looking forward, or that are coming out about the quarterbacks right now, is how does the QB's skill set fit within the offensive system? Well, Billy Edwards is becoming that game manager that this offense desperately needs, and that Wisconsin football needs. Wisconsin football is at its best when its QBs aren't making mistakes, are not put in position to make critical mistakes. They're there to facilitate the offense. And I think Billy Edwards is going to be able to do that. He has shown so far this spring the ability to distribute the football, get the ball out quickly to his receivers, getting comfortable throwing to multiple different targets, getting connection with those targets, still having a little bit of issue with consistency on his deeper balls, tendency to overthrow some balls. This, I would say normally that just sounds like kind of not necessarily nerves, but just getting too amped up and just throwing the ball too hard. But as we've heard from Maryland people in the past, this is a tendency that Billy has, is to overthrow some balls. So hopefully coming into the second half of spring, he can work on that. His mobility has been used in design QB run game. They've moved him around on rollouts and on play actions. Obviously, we've seen the famous deep ball that was shown on Twitter. One of the first days of camp was a play action into a 5-step and throwing double post. Great to see. He's willing to put the ball out there, and he just seems so smooth and calm in his footwork on a drop like that is encouraging to see. Also, that just shows you right there, and also with some of the other clips we've seen of the QBs, is gone away is the Phil Longo approach to quarterback footwork. So we're not going to be backpedaling into our drops anymore. We're going to be doing the standard horizontal drop that 95% of QB coaches use. Not saying there's anything wrong with it. Phil Longo had an interesting approach when it came to footwork, and it's one of the things that drew me to his offense to begin with, because I find that it makes sense, which is the straight drop back, so then you can see the entire field when you're dropping back, especially when you're looking to your back shoulder. You're not looking over your shoulder to see to your left if you're a right-handed quarterback. That being said, unless you grew up doing such a thing, it takes time to learn it and to get comfortable with it. And then your offense has to be built around it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone's going back to what they're used to. 95% of these kids have done the standard drop back. The footwork that I've seen so far is going to let us know that, yeah, we're going to go back to that. And I'm hoping if we're using stuff like that kind of footwork with the QB, timing with routes, et cetera, it should be second nature. They're not going to be thinking about getting their footwork correct. It's just going to be natural, instinctual, and that is going to allow for the routes to open up more naturally for the QBs. All right. Last thing I just want to talk about here offensively is the early so far in this video, we talked about the motions and why we're using more motion. And what I want to talk about that a little bit more before we go into the second half, because I think this could give you an idea of what this offense is going to look like. And if you want some reference points to what this offense can look like, is I think my guess is we are going to be looking for a feature ball handler in this offense that is not necessarily a traditional running back or traditional receiver. Meaning, what I'm betting on is Coach Grimes is looking for the Wisconsin Badgers equivalent of prime Deebo Samuels. And for those of you who've been living under a rock and don't watch NFL football, Deebo Samuels, formerly of the 49ers, now of the Commanders, was the Kyle Shanahan all-purpose player. He is a wide receiver who would line up in the backfield, take straight handoffs, jet sweeps, pitch relationship. They used him all over the place. And when you do stuff like that, obviously you can't prepare for him to be in one spot. So you have to dedicate a lot of defensive manpower and brain power to stopping one guy. And there are a couple of guys in this offense that I think could fit that role. One being obviously Trechka Kahuna, if he can stay healthy. And another foot injury is making me maybe doubt that a little bit. But I think the idea of being this Deebo Samuels type is a reason why they got him back. Is to be like, you're going to be in a line to get 15, 20 touches a game. And not just catching bubbles and running seams like last season. It's going to be motions, jet sweeps, pitch relationships, lining up in the backfield, lining up as a wide receiver, getting a lot of different looks like that. Another guy I think that could do that is Darian Dupree. And I would not be surprised if we get in situations where we could literally be in 22 personnel with 2 tight ends and 2 backs with Cade Yakameli in the backfield and Darian Dupree line up as a slot receiver and then using him as that motion jet sweep pitch relationship, whatever, the gadget guy, along with a single receiver. He has the skill set to be a slot receiver. He has the skill set to be a player in the backfield. And this is a way that they could do both. And it could be a way for a guy like Darian Dupree to get more touches. Because I think Cade Yakameli fits the ideals of what Coach Grimes is looking for in a wide zone reading tailback. So this is just another opportunity that Darian Dupree could use to get more touches. But obviously, we're not going to know what that looks like until we actually see the Badgers on the field. Okay, well, we've already been talking for like 25 minutes here. Let's take a little bit of time to talk about the defense and what we've heard so far. The defensive structure, and the first thing we're going to talk about is, have there been any shifts in the base defense and the base personnel groupings? That one is going to be interesting because I don't know. You've seen, there was a picture that Matt Mitchell put up a week or so ago of him with his group. And his group, he is the outside linebacker coach. But if you look at the players who are in his group, they're not all linebackers. And what I mean by that is, yes, some of them are listed as outside linebackers. But to me, to be a linebacker, you need to have the potential to drop in coverage. And I don't think they're going to be dropping Corey Walker or Michael Gardner into pass coverage. So what I think we're seeing is Matt Mitchell's role has expanded from being the outside linebackers coach to being the edge coach, which means he's going to take not only the stand-up outside linebackers, but the hand-in-the-dirt 5-tech defensive ends. And what we are seeing and we're hearing is we're getting 4 down looks with 2 true inside defensive tackles, a on-the-ball stand-up outside linebacker, and a hand-in-the-dirt 5-tech edge-type player. So to me, this is not a 4-2. This is a 3-3, what I call an over or an under front. If there is a defensive-minded coach with better terminology, please tell me. Where you have your 3 true down linemen, and you bring the outside linebacker, one of the outside linebackers down the line, you move one of those defensive ends into either a 4-eye or a 3, shift the nose over to a 2-eye, and you have a 4 down look with 3 true down linemen and an outside linebacker. That's one group that I'm expecting us to be using a lot more this year. Another one that I think we're going to be using more as well is essentially 3-4 personnel or 2-4 personnel, depending on the type of bodies that we want to use with this, where you're going to have 3 or 4 down in the line with either 3 true down linemen and a linebacker, or 2 true down linemen and a linebacker, 2 inside backers, and then an off the ball outside linebacker who plays in space between the nickel and the edge on the front side, or a player who is in that nickel type positioning on the back side with the faster outside linebacker or edge guy on the front side. And this is a way to get more size on the field without sacrificing as much athletic ability, because that's always been the issue, is being able to get the big bodies on the field that we need without sacrificing speed, which is it's not like the old days where we can line up in base personnel every down. In fact, most teams are going to force us to be in the nickel. We've talked about that since the beginning. And it's a roster situation that was going to happen regardless if Coach Fickle was the coach or not, because year 2023, if it was the same coaching staff, who would have been the big down lineman? We didn't have any. So this was a recruiting roster building error that we had going into 2023, and it finally took until this year to get it solved. And I'm hoping that we get the better body types to fill those spots. So we're getting bigger, stronger with our own guys, gaining weight, gaining strength, adding weight, bringing in new guys with size, weight, but then also have athletic ability, and using a guy like Corey Walker as a true edge rusher, as a true edge setter, and not having to have the opportunity for him to drop in coverage, just have him be treated as a true defensive lineman and putting athletes behind him. And that makes sense, and I think it'll fit the personnel that we have, but not more importantly, it'll fit the offenses that we'll see. It's something that when Dave Aranda went from Wisconsin to Baylor and played in the Big 12 back then, the Big 12 back in 2016, 2017, forget when he got his first year of his head coaching, is a lot closer to what the Big 10 is now than back then. So much more speed, combination of size, strength, and speed. So Dave Aranda's 2-4 defense quickly evolved into a 3-3 with a 4-down look and utilizing a little bit more size. And it's something that this offense or this defense would have evolved to eventually. So luckily, it sounds like finally we're starting to get the right pieces in place and building a defense that can fit both the space and the power aspects that offenses are trying to occupy this year, which hopefully is going to be leading into better opportunities for pass rush, better opportunities for blitzing. Sounds like already Corey Walker is becoming a problem and is getting off the edge and becoming a real troublemaker on the defensive line. Could be that he's going up against our second team right tackle, who knows. But it's nice to hear defensive linemen making plays, which is something this offense has not had, or this defense has not had since Keanu Benton, and has rarely had beyond Keanu Benton. The playmaking for the Badgers offense, or I keep saying offense, the Badgers defense has always been the linebackers. So it's good to hear that some defensive linemen are actually getting some run and getting some quality reps, and we can build a pressure system around people more than just the linebackers. All right, so I think that's what we're going to call it here today. Again, all the information that I'm taking here is information that I've read or heard from somebody else, and I've taken and speculated on what that could mean in terms of X's and O's. I could be totally baseless with some of my analysis, but it's better than nothing. We are in the dog days of spring ball where there's not really much to see, and it's just making opinions, and I hate basing content on that. But if I don't, then I got nothing to feed the algorithm, right? So that's what it's going to be. We'll call it there. Badgers will be back on the practice field next week, and hopefully we get some more information about what we are seeing on the field, and then we can use that information to answer more of our questions and figure out what direction this Badgers team is going into 2025. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.